What is up, everybody? Today is an exciting one because I truly get to check out an awesome app. And yes, this is a sponsored video, but I'm telling you, if it wasn't sponsored, I would have done a video on it anyhow because it is so freaking cool. And that is an app called Rive. So if we head on over to our browser here, we can see we have Rive app. I'm going to refresh this just to show initial animation and take a look at this. This is a part of what Rive actually is. Look how insane and interactive all of this is. I'm gonna scroll out here. This is, again, http rive.app. That's the website. And there's a lot of examples here. And essentially what Rive is, you can create and ship interactive animations to the web, apps, and games. All right, and they have what's called the state machine. I'm gonna show you how to use that and how to create our own actual animation like this. And let me show you real quickly just the community section. So if we go over here to community, you'll see a lot of things that the community has created. So when you create a Rive animation, you can upload it to the community. Check this thing out. Isn't that cool? It's not interactive, although some of them are with what's called the state machine. So these are all the different state machines that we have access to, and you can have inputs. And so here's an example. If I click plus, or if I just hit up on my keyboard arrow key, look at this animation. So you can use it with what are called inputs. You can also have like actual toggle buttons like this. We can toggle this on, toggle this off. Just look how smooth and awesome all of these animations are. So there's a lot of really cool projects people have created with this. And so I'm going to show you exactly how to use it. All right, so as always, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. All right, so once you create your account, we're going to click on new file right here. And this gives us the option to have dimensions of the artboard, and we're just gonna leave it at 500 by 500 and click create. So we're gonna really quickly just talk about the interface and the layout of the UI here. On the left, you're gonna have your artboards and all of your layers and groups inside of it. Very typical, dating all the way back to Photoshop. So very standard, which is good because it's relatable. We also up here, we have some drawing tools. This will give you the shapes like rectangles, different polygons, the dreaded pen tool, which we are going to use. Artboard here, bones as well. We're not going to get into bones here, but it's very cool. It's what allows you to take like a single like vector-based shape and just make it move like this by adding bones. And then of course group over here. We also have over here the tabs, design and animate. So when you click to the animate section, which we'll do after we actually create some type of illustration, you'll have the timeline down here. Where you create your animations and your state machines. Very, very fun stuff. Over here as well, once we select an element, like for instance the artboard, we have our property inspector when all this stuff changes based on what you select. All right, so what we're gonna do is I'm going to first change the canvas or artboard background color. And to do that, we're just gonna click on fill over here. Of course, we can choose and make it a solid color, but also a radial or linear gradient. So I kind of want to really shift focus right towards this centralized element. So we're gonna use a radial gradient, make it light in the middle, and then a little bit more dark, I guess you could say, on the outsides. So we're gonna choose radial gradient here. And you can see when we select this, sometimes this will go away. Click back here, and then you'll see this big, radial gradient essentially. We're gonna move this here to the center, all right? And then we're going to, in the middle, for the middle selector, currently this color stop right here is selected. You can see if we can move this around. We can go ahead and select blue, and we're just gonna go kind of like a light blue, not quite white, but pretty light blue. Then we're gonna select the one at the end, instead of it being black. Let's go ahead and just use this, the eyedropper tool. Never really knew what people call that. Is the color picker or the color picker? We'll just call it the color picker. And we're gonna come out here right around, somewhere right around there is pretty good. And so I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we're gonna get into actually drawing stuff here. So we can come out here, like I said, we have our shape tools and the pen tool. We're gonna work with both. I'm not going to show you the full process of designing this entire little rocket sort of ship thing. just because it becomes a little bit redundant and it makes the tutorial unnecessarily long. So I am going to show you just a few of the basic things to be concerned about when you're using the pen tool. The shape tools are all very simple to use as always. And so let's get started with the pen tool. So we're going to create the basic structure of the rocket. We want it to be symmetrical. So we're going to replicate one half of it and then we'll move it over so that we create a full rocket ship. So if you never use a pen tool, it can be a little bit tricky, but worry not. It's just, if anything, you have to practice with it. So I'm going to left click once here, and now you can see we can place another Bezier curve somewhere, and we want to make a Bezier curve perhaps maybe right around here and hold shift. This will make it so that we can't lock it like this. It'll lock it on a 90-degree axis, or as you see 45, or just flat here. So pull down right around there, and then maybe hold shift, left click once here, and then come down just slightly and left click and drag out. All right, so that's the shape that we want. Now what I'll do now is I'm going to hit enter, we're going to select it, and for the color we're going to go ahead and make this a very light gray to start with. Right around there will work. And also we're going to give it a nice big old thick stroke. So we're going to click plus here in the stroke section, and then we're going to make it black, and I think we're going to make it pretty thick, like 5. Also, we'll come out to the options right here, and we're going to choose rounded. I'm going to make it a little bit larger than what it actually is here. So there's several different ways we can just drag out here and do that if we wish. We could also adjust these little elements here. You can like scale it this way, move it up, move it right, all that stuff. But we could also come over here. We can drag up in any of these kind of like text field things, which is nice. I'm just going to put like 120 on the width and the height. All right, so that looks to me pretty decent right there. Maybe I'm going to make it a little bit wider right there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is duplicate that. Control D. As you can see, we have our 2 custom shapes right here. And I'm just going to drag this over, and right there seems to be pretty good. So now what we'll do is take both of those, we can group them up, and that's the process of using the pen tool. I mean, all the other tools right here, like the shape tools, you know, they work exactly as you would expect. You select them, you change the properties, and you try to match them up. So at this point, because I don't want this to be an unnecessarily long tutorial, I'm going to time lapse the creation of this this rocket ship. And also, I do want to mention one thing that was very confusing to me. We're going to take the pen tool again here, and I do want to mention one thing that was confusing. So what I want you to be wary of, I'm just going to draw off on the side here. When you click here and you create a Bezier curve, and you try to maybe create like a right angle right here, and you move this, you can't stop it. Like I tried to hold Alt, you can't stop the other one from it being affected. You actually can though. It's right over here. You click this, and then you can drag just this one in, and that'll be important for creating the rest of the rocket shape. So here we go, time-lapse portion. Let's rock. Now I did really want to quickly show you another gradient type, which is a linear gradient. Very simple. We're just going to move, and we're creating a flame kind of situation right here. We're going to move this right here to there. We want this to fade off, so we're going to take the black color picker, which is down there, the black color stop rather. We're going to grab the background color, which is right around here, but also take the opacity slider all the way down. And then also we can add color stops as well. So we're going to drag this one right here. We're going to place one by left clicking right there, and then we'll take this down to 0% and also change the color to black. All right, then we'll duplicate this, Control D, and we'll take the original one underneath it. We'll make it a little bit wider, center this up, and then also make it longer as well. And then we'll take this color, or this gradient rather, and we're going to change it to a blue color. So right here, kind of like this, Maybe just drag it down a little bit further. And maybe move this one up. And there we go. That's going to be our flames. And then finally, one last thing we're going to do is take this shape tool. We're going to create an ellipse. We're create kind of like a shadow down here. And we're going to move this over. Oh, by the way, I forgot, when it comes to this type of technique, we want to make a perfect circle first and then add a radial gradient inside of it. So we'll do radial, move this back here to the center. We're going to make the center be a darker version of this blue color. And then the outside will be around this color, but also 0 opacity. Now we can take it and squash it down like that, and we'll have a nice, subtle, little shadow. So we're going to go ahead and name some of these layers. This is going to be the shadow. So just double click and then you can change the name. These two elements, we're going to group them up, Control G. These are going to be called our flames. And then everything else. And we're going to deselect the flames and the shadow layer there. We're going to Control G to group, and we're going to call this rocket. Awesome. So now we are done with the actual design phase of this. And what we'll do now is by default, we're going to hide both of these elements, which means we're going to select them both and choose 0 for the opacity. And you'll see why we'll do that here in a second. Now we're going to go ahead and switch to the actual animate tab, which is a lot of the fun stuff. Now, if you wanted to add bones and stuff like that, you would do that now. But again, we're not going to cover bones. I'll link some tutorials here, especially from the official YouTube Rive channel. But for now, we're not going to operate with the bones at all. We're just going to play with the state machine and animations. So the way this works is we're going to use what's called a state machine. And the state machine basically allows you to connect multiple different types of animations that you've created for your scene. And it provides logic, essentially, to where you can seamlessly transition between these different animation states that you've created based on the timeline, based on conditions and other factors. So it's really powerful and it's very fun to play with. So we're going to create the necessary animations first, and then we're going to tie them together into the state machine. I probably won't show you all the animations just because there's going to be like 4 different animations, but I will show you a couple here. So first, we can see by default we're starting with an animation 1. If I move my head to the other way, it says animation 1 way down here. We can double click that to change that, and let's change it to idle. So we're going to have, by default, when it starts off, it's just going to very subtly wobble up and down, and that shadow is going to come in and out. So what we'll do is, you can notice there's nothing here and there's no keyframes or anything. We're going to take our rocket and we're just going to add a keyframe by coming up here from position. We'll do X and Y, although we don't need to do X. We don't need to move it to right or left. We're just going to do Y right here. And then when you see that, it says rocket. Sorry, I'm in the way. It says rocket right there, and you can see a keyframe has been added. And then what we can do is move in the timeline, and we'll move it right to the middle, 30 frames. By default, this is 1 minute long, so you can adjust everything here, the playback speed and the FPS, which we're going to leave at 60, which will make it pretty smooth, or very smooth rather. Then we're just going to take this and move it up very slightly. If you have too much height on this, it's going to look silly, kind of going up and down. We can also copy keyframes, and we'll come out to the very end and paste them. Then for the interpolation, let's just adjust this and choose cubic. All right, so you can play around with this as well to affect the animation type. Next, we're gonna change this from one shot to loop so that it just loops indefinitely. Hit our keyboard spacebar, and there we go. Look how easy that is. All right, so now what we'll do, hit your spacebar again to stop that, is we're gonna make our shadow layer come in and out. So when it gets close, we'll have it opacity 100, and when it gets away, opacity 0. So let's go ahead right here. We're gonna select our shadow, and we're going to apply a keyframe under right here, which is the opacity. So it starts out close to it. So we're going to put 100%. And then we're going to put another keyframe. We'll put 0. And then we'll just copy this one real quick and put this right here. So now if I hit the space bar, there we go. Now it looks kind of far away, so we can also move it. So we can just move it up. We can get rid of this keyframe it created right there. Oops, nope. What we'll do is just move this over here. There we go. So now it's a little bit closer and we can make these fine-tuned adjustments. Now what I might actually end up doing is I realized I wanted to initially start everything a little bit lower. So it's gonna require me to readjust these keyframes a bit. Again, it's good just to get this practice anyhow. So what we can do is just take all this stuff and move it down. This will be the starting position. We'll take all this and we'll paste that. If we come over here, let's delete these. Move these to the very end. Now it's going to be real high. That's crazy looking, right? So what do we have to do? Come here back to the center and we'll just move this down. And the things that we're going to move down are just these two right here temporarily. Let's see what this looks like. That's much better. There we go. Now the reason I wanted to move down is because we're going to make this shoot up a little bit. So that is our very first actual animation. And so now we're going to create a new one by clicking plus. Not sure if, let me get that out of the way. Click plus, animation, and let's go ahead and create one where it shoots up a little bit and then rotates. So we'll call this one, what did I call this one before? Fire up. All right. Okay, so now notice how they're in two different locations. This is based on the original position, based on the design. So what we can do instead of that, we could do a few things. We could right click and duplicate that initial animation that we created. But I believe we can also just take these keyframes and possibly just paste them right in. And yes, we can. Awesome. So what happens now when we want this fire up to kind of occur? Well, I want this to fade out. So that's going to be 0. So we're no longer going to see the shadow at all at this point. And then also this, I want it to push up just a little bit. And then also I want it to rotate at a 45-degree angle. So I'm holding shift. All right, so we don't have to create like animation for that. The system, the state machine is intelligent enough to know no matter where we're at what point during this animation this is at, it's going to seamlessly transition it for, like, for instance, if the toggle button is selected here, it will animate it right smoothly to this position between the different animations. By the way, I decided to move myself off of that side of the screen just so we could see what's happening. So now what we want to do is create a second animation. What we can do is right click and just duplicate, or click the plus sign. I'm going to duplicate because it's going to remember some of these values. And then we can see we have 2 of these. So we're going to change this one to fire up. All right, so for fire up, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff right here. We're just going to keep these ones the same, these initial keyframes. So what we want to do for the fire up sequence, this is what happens after idle. We're going to push this up right around here, and we're also going to fade this out to 0 opacity. All right, so then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to grow it just a little bit and scale it up, and we're going to do that right around 15 frames. So we're just going to scale this up just slightly, very subtly. And then around 30, we're going to go ahead and move it. Now, when I say move it, we're going to rotate it. And so before we do that, we want to put a keyframe under rotation right here at the beginning, and then come here to 30 and then rotate it in this mark right here. We could just put 45. like that, or you could use that little circular area to do it with your mouse. All right, so now let's take a look at that. Now, one thing that happened is it looks like it's not shooting up, but it's going to shoot up because we're going to be transitioning from this anywhere at any point during this animation from idle to fire up. All right, so hopefully you understand that the state machine is smart enough to know it'll transition from, anywhere naturally from one animation to the other. So it'll move like this, and then that's all we're going to place right there. So next up, we're going to have another animation, and this is the main animation where we make it look like it's flying, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click and duplicate this. We're going to call this one. This will be. I think we'll call this flying. Yeah. So it's actually flying in the air at this point. And let's see here. We're gonna. Yeah, we're gonna leave it like that. We're gonna take both of these, and we're just gonna take these keyframes and just merge them to the very beginning, like so. All right, so what we'll do to make it look like it's flying is we're gonna make it move a little bit and make it move kind of like in a subtle manner. So to do that, I think probably right around here, maybe like every 15 frames or so, we're gonna make it so that it moves back and forth. So what we'll do is put some keyframes initially. We have a position, we want a position X as well. So we see these two blue keyframes, X and Y, at the very starting frame. Then we're gonna go to 15, and we're going to take this, this Y selector and move it back like that. Now we can take the rocket keyframe right here, go to 30, and paste this as well at 45, and then take this and paste this here. Now let's go ahead, and it's already looping, and that's the type of animation we want, and let's hit play. All right, it looks a little bit strange, like it's a little bit wobbly. I'm gonna check that out on my end just to make sure it's all good, but this is basically the part of the main animation that we want, and we're also going to animate the flames as well. All right, so that looks good. What we're gonna do now is make the flames come in and out in some way, shape, or form. So we're gonna select our flames layer. Temporarily, we're gonna put it at 100% opacity, just so that we can see it, and then we're going to rotate it at 45 degree angle, and then move the entire thing over where it needs to be, and then I think right here looks pretty in center. All right, and then what we'll do is we're gonna put it back. We're gonna start it at 0 opacity, and we're gonna put a keyframe, position and scale, which it already is, and opacity. Right around here maybe. We'll go ahead. Now notice that the rocket's moving, so we have to take that into effect as well, into account. We'll put one maybe right around 5. We'll change this to 100%. All right, and then also, I think we'll push this down right around here for that keyframe. So it's gonna go like this. And then we will come down here at 15, and we'll give it a 0% opacity. And maybe make it come back up. Let's see what that looks like that. So now we can just take this entire section, or these two right here, and we could just repeat these where they need to be. So I think right here, let's move those like this. Let's see if this works. Now these might need to be adjusted because it's coming out a little bit too far. So we'll go ahead and move this up. And then we'll copy this one. Okay, and then finally, this could be a little bit tricky, so I'm trying to make sure I do things correctly here. Okay, so let's hit the keyboard. There we go. So it's very subtle, as you can see. And one final animation I'm going to do, which is to reverse the fire up. We're going to have a fire down as well to revert the state. So I'll just duplicate that. Double click. We're going to change this to fire down. All right, and then I'll just reverse the entire order here. So at 30, we'll put these. This one will go at 1. This one will be moved here, and then this will go back to 30. So what happens is it just kind of goes back. It's a reverse state. Now it's time for creating the state machine. So we click over here, click state machine, and then we have this section. It's not a timeline, it's an area to create your state, your logic and all that. So what we do is we're gonna take first our idle here. For our entry, we're gonna put right here, and then idle will go right after entry. And then as you can see, we can left click and drag connections between these elements. And then we can click on the little arrow between them and apply some logic and also some other stuff. Now we have what are called inputs. Hit plus, and we can create a number-based input, Boolean, true, false, or a trigger. So we're just going to choose a trigger for this, and we can make this our space bar. And whenever we press it, we can switch between these animation states. So when we click this little plus, or the right arrow, and we can see conditions, we're going to hit plus, and then just choose trigger 1 right here. Also, the duration will also affect things. I'm just going to put 250 milliseconds. And my best I guess suggestion is to play around with these values to see how it affects the animations based on when you're pressing your space bar, or not your space bar. I have to back up. The triggers are triggered by clicking over here in this like little radio box area. The space bar is what's going to start and stop the actual sequence. So right now, if we hit play and we hit this trigger, that's going to start the animation sequence. All right. So if we want to press the trigger again to go to the fire up sequence, well, we have to add some more logic. So we're going to take fire up. We'll just put it right here and then drag this to there. All right. So now what's going to happen is I think is going to happen, we hit play, hit the trigger. All right, so what happened there? It automatically went to idle and then to fire up. So we have to change that because we're gonna add a condition to it. So right here, we're gonna add 1,000 millisecond duration, and we're gonna add a condition called trigger 1. And that right there looks pretty good. So now let's go back to play this. This is gonna start it, and then we'll click it again, and there we go. Now this one should not be looping, so we're gonna go back to our fire up sequence, change this just to 1 shot, as well as fire down to 1 shot. Now we go back, play, idle, fire up, there we go. And then we'll make it transition to flying. So now we're gonna put flying here. And this one, we want it to happen basically right after fire up starts. We don't want to have to click a trigger for this to occur. So let's see what happens now. I will hit play, fire up, and there we go. Look at that. Now what we want to do is reverse this so that if we press trigger 1 again, it'll go to fire down. Put fire down here. We're going to drag this from there. And this is going to be the same thing. We're going to click on this. This is going to be 1,000 milliseconds. We're going to add the condition of trigger 1. So basically what that means is if the state of trigger 1 is changed, then do this and go to fire down, for instance. And then we'll bring this here, and after fire down, I believe we don't have to, yeah, we're going to change this duration to 200 milliseconds, and then also an exit time. And again, the best way for me to describe this is just to experiment with these values. These are the values that I found that work best. Let's go ahead and hit play. All right, so we have our idle. I'm gonna click it again to fire up and go to flying. And then we'll click it again. Oh no, look at that. All right, so I figured out what I needed to do. If I hit play again, you can see will have fixed the issue. So we turn in here, and then we'll fire down, and there it goes. So much better. What I had to do was just go to the fire down and make sure that it's kind of stays stationary while it's doing the transition from the previous state, which is the flying state where the stuff is coming out, like the flames, and then at the end turn it or tilt it. All right, so that is it with the state machine. There's obviously so much more that you can learn with this and do. And from here, you have a few options. You can download it for the newest runtime, version 7 or previous. And then you could also publish it to the community. And I think for perhaps a future tutorial, we'll try to make this and integrate it on a website or something like that. But yeah, here it is. You can publish community. Everybody can see it, and you can link people to it with a title and all of that good stuff. I think I'll do it right now. Flying rocket ship. Give that a description and publish to the community. All right, copy that, and we can click view now. And I'll link this here in the YouTube description, of course. Click on trigger 1, click it again, and fire down. Also, I wanted to show you, I did take it a step further. I'm gonna click play here just to show you. And this would be kind of like an interesting exercise for those of you who wish to want to take it on. Watch what happens here. Look at these cool little lines that kind of come through, just to, you know, exaggerate the effect of it moving through air. You can do that by animating the offset of the stroke of individual lines. You can see these are all custom shapes here, each one of these. So yeah, definitely give that a shot if you wish. And awesome, awesome stuff. Love this tool, very powerful. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did. It's really exciting. I'm actually gonna personally use it for my own site at DesignCourse.com in different regards, and perhaps I'll do tutorials on that as well. So the Rive team, they definitely wanted me to mention the fact that they envision Rive as being basically bridging a gap between design and development, because everything is handled pretty much within your Rive file and the Rive user interface. So I definitely check it out. If you really want to create next level animations, this is the software in my opinion. So as always, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.